All right, GM, we are live, and today we have Matt with us from Big Time. How have you been, Matt? It's been a while since we spoke last.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I've been doing well since the last time we chatted, although I know we stay in pretty close contact over Twitter. Things have been going well over here at Big Time, and we're ramping up for Ruby Pass here in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. I think for the people that are new, let's just go over what Big Time is and all the basic stuff first, and then we'll get into the juicy stuff. So first, let's give a quick introduction of who you are.
I am Matt. I am the guild manager for Big Time, and I do a lot of our social media outreach.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
what is Big Time for those that don't know?
For those that don't know, they are missing out. That's what that
Yeah,
is. But a
they
more
are.
a more accurate description is it's a multiplayer online action RPG with some MMO elements inside of it. So the general lore is players come in here to prevent time from collapsing. It's set kind of in the distant future at the ends of humanity, and then some of the cool things inside of the game involve you being able to collect cosmetic skins as droppable loot inside the game, and those skins are NFTs, and you can sell them on the Big Time marketplace or mint them onto a variety of different chains. We're currently in early access, but we're ramping up for a global launch here in the next few months or so.
And one of the major things about Big Time is the team behind it. It's probably the strongest team out of all the NFT gaming projects that are building right now. So, can you share about what they've done in the past?
Yeah, the team is super strong. We've got some great people at Big Time, present company, absolutely not included. So I guess it kind of starts off with Ari and Thor. Ari was one of the co-founders of Decentraland, which I think by market cap is either the first or the second biggest game on Web3 right now. So absolutely iconic and a pioneer in the space. Thor was also at Decentraland, but prior to that, he was one of the early ons at Zynga Games, which I think when it came out had the biggest IPO since Google, and so they're really they're the CPO and the CEO of the company. Then the developers from the company really have a strong AAA game background in it. So we've got some veterans of League of Legends, Gears of War, Fortnite, Diablo. All people who have been part of iconic games and iconic teams, and then all of that, bringing them all together, putting them into a Web3 environment, and they came up with Big Time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, do you know if there was any resistance when it comes to hiring, Web2 developers? Because there's a divide between them. Some of them love them. Some of them are like, no, we don't touch that NFT stuff.
Unfortunately, I came in a little bit too late to see any of that
Oh,
resistance to the hiring. But you're absolutely right. I have noticed a ton of resistance to Web3 gaming from a Web2 audience. It feels like about 10 to 20% somewhere in there just seem to have a strong animosity to NFTs or crypto. And what I've kind of generally found from experience is that it's either they've had bad personal experiences with it, or there's almost like a lack of understanding about what the technology can do. And so if people are willing to give us a chance and they come into it with kind of a, let's say, a negative attitude towards crypto, we're often able to kind of persuade them that there are upsides to it. And I think the way that Big Time incorporates blockchain into gaming is tasteful, it's interesting, and enhances gamer experiences more than anything else.
so is there a moment where they, when the light bulb turns on? Like, what do you have to say to convince them that NFTs aren't evil?
It's a good one. I have found probably the best way I can describe it is comparing it to Fortnite. When you get a
Okay.
cosmetic skin in Fortnite, you don't truly own that skin. You essentially rent it from Fortnite and use it while you're playing. And don't get me wrong, Fortnite has been very successful with that as a game and as a community. But you can't sell it, you can't change it, you can't alter it, and if you rage quit, you'll lose it forever. And for some people that start off with a lower level skin, and then as they kind of get a little bit more need, buy some more stuff to change their appearance. Well, all that stuff they've bought previously isn't kind of doing much for them, and they don't really use it. The way we've built Big Time is you can sell those skins, and by being able to sell and trade them or move them out of the game, what you're essentially talking about is blockchain technology. So that's what we've done. We've taken something that people have already done and are familiar with, and like we gave more power back to the user and the player, and allowed them to kind of gain from it. Additionally, Big Time doesn't sell a single skin, zero.
Yeah.
It's all player to player, and the way you get there is through blockchain, and that's why our skins are all NFTs.
It seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like most of the Web2 gamers hate NFTs because they think it's just a cash grab. And I don't blame them. Like, all the headlines are like, this NFT sold for this much, this company raised this much money into the rug pull. So I understand why they're skeptical. And on top of that, I feel like I'm just learning about the Web2 gamer crowd right now. And it seems like they're all very disappointed. It seems like these companies have milked them for all their dollars. So, is that right?
Yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough to watch it. I can't speak to every Web3 company, but I know some people have been very frustrated, particularly over the last like few months, given the market downturn. But I think we can generally agree that a lot of people played Web3 games not because they were fun and enjoyable, but because there was an ability for them to earn, even if it was pretty modest. And so there was a tolerance of suboptimal gameplay compared to something that's AAA or Web2 based because they could make something out of it. Whereas we feel very strongly at Big Time that there doesn't need to be that trade-off. Like you can bring great gameplay and also an ability to play and earn if you want, but it should be optional. It shouldn't be the main purpose of the game. If it was just about earning, we would just call it a job. And we were very much at Big Time game first. Like that should be the most important part and really our North Pole for where we're always aiming the company.
Yeah. And whenever Web2 gamers call NFTs a cash grab, I just point them towards Big Time because it's completely free to play, and it's play and earn. Like there's literally nothing you can lose. So when I give them that example, they're like, okay, well, I can't say anything anymore.
Exactly. And that's a similar thing I've brought up with other people as well who are like, well, I bet it's really expensive to play or it's somehow pay to win. And if I just buy more NFTs, I can do better. And it's like, I mean, not in Big Time. Like,
Yeah.
all
Not
of
a
our
big
NFTs are purely cosmetic. Like we try and make them look cool so you can have a theme and that's it.
hmm
If you want to spend 0 pennies in the game, you can do that and get to the highest levels. Really, anybody who grinds the hardest is going to get the farthest ahead.
So is there a reason why you guys didn't make Big Time pay to win?
I think the main thing was we want to have a big player audience. That's generally what how I personally feel about it. When people are like, well what's the shtick? Where am I getting had here? How is Big Time making money? Um, I, I mean, the main thing we said is we need a lot of people to play the game, and it's somewhat simplistic and almost it's not that devious when we're like, okay, well, we want a lot of people to play it and we want a lot of people to enjoy it. And people are like, okay, all right, what's the kicker here? It's like, okay, well, to do that, you got to make an enjoyable game. And so that's what we did. We brought together great people, very innovative people to do that. And we're trying to make something different, hasn't been done before, and it's got kind of a few unique features in it that players would like. And they're like, okay, well, what's the shtick? And we're like, that's it. I mean, that's when you have a lot of players, when you have millions of monthly active users, it gives you a lot of options.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you think you'll have trouble onboarding that many Web2 players into Big Time?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think it goes back to the way we built our interface. So anybody who's playing the game right now knows that all you got to do to log in and play the game is have a PC and a Google account, and that's it. And that's different, right? That's even less than your average AAA game, where you probably need to pay for something upfront,
True.
or if it's like a pay to win or like an MMO type game, it's probably pretty close to that. But I think the main thing for us is trying to get the word out that hey, just because there are NFTs, it doesn't detract from your experience. But I really do believe that Big Time is going to have a lot of users in it in the future.
Yeah, I believe it too. That's why I'm just
Yeah,
pumping out as much content as possible.
yeah.
So for content creators and other people playing the alpha right now, we know that the alpha is only a fraction of the game. So when can we expect new content? When's the global launch going to happen, and how much more content will there be?
So we release new content with every patch that we do. So far we've had 3 patches, and each one has released a little bit more content. Our next big one is going to come with this Ruby Pass entry. So you needed an early access pass to play in the early part of early access, but as we go into Ruby, you don't need to pay for any passes anymore. It's going to be basically by invite only. More content will come in there, more like quality of life type stuff. I think that global launch will probably aim maybe somewhere in third quarter towards the end of it. If I'm being honest, maybe even into fourth quarter. Fortunately, we don't have a time yet. But what we have released and what we have teased is basically multiple years of additional content. So for people who aren't familiar, like we call our worlds in the game timeshares, and we've only released one timeshare, but we have teased additional ones, all within that kind of time traveling theme. So we've got like a dinosaur and cowboy world. We've got an Atlantis themed one. We've got one that this is in a futuristic setting that's almost like Blade Runner. All of these are going to be things that players can look forward to in the not too distant future after the global launch.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And I just want to go back to pay to win. What are your thoughts on pay to win?
That's a good one. Pay to win, especially when you look at it through the Axie lens, it would be remiss to kind of talk down about it, because it truly was revolutionary in my mind. It did something very unique in the game space and did a lot to improve the lives of a lot of people, right? That was where we saw
Yeah.
people doing it full time in tons of different countries throughout the world, and we saw that explosion in the popularity of Axie Infinity. So I can't take away from what it did for the gaming space, because it clearly did a lot. In my mind, the future of gaming is probably not in pay to win. It's probably something more along the lines of play and earn, or uh, or play and own, where basically players get their assets. Previously people used to pay for games, and now they were free to play. It's almost makes sense on that roadmap that eventually games start paying the players to play, and that's basically what you can do in big time. If you grind enough, you can find enough skins with a $0 kind of barrier to entry. You can make money off of it, if that's what you want, with really no upside while playing a great game.
Awesome. And yeah, Axie Infinity did change millions of lives, and it's awesome. But as a content creator, it was frustrating because it was very limiting. Some of these Axies, they're like $1,000 each, and those are for like the decent ones. For the good ones, that was a point where you had to pay like 3 Ethereum when Ethereum was at 4K, and the meta changes like every 3 months. You can't keep up with it unless you're like unless you're like a whale. And I just didn't have that kind of money, and a lot of people don't. So it's very limiting to players all around the world, as well as content creators. So it's good to know that with big time you won't run into that problem. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. It was interesting to me. I've read a lot of articles and heard some people say that gaming guilds were invented with Axie Infinity to basically overcome those barriers to entry, where a guild would basically buy those Axies and in some way permission them down to their scholars. And I remember being somewhat taken aback by that. I was like, well, that's not true. I mean, there were gaming guilds long before that. There were World of Warcraft. Was like one of those where like guilds had a very prominent space, and those were really players coming together and working cooperatively. So when we talk about guilds in big time, they are Web3 guilds generally speaking, but a lot of their mechanics and the way that they have to operate inside of big time is almost a harkening back to the way that Web2 games did, especially in big time, where there's so many kind of like increasing benefits to increased gameplay or cooperative gameplay. So that's what we like. It builds a stronger community and helps people kind of find each other inside the game.
So recently I was reached out by one of the big time guilds, and they asked if I wanted to join it. So what benefit would I get from joining their guild? They said they own space and they got like 1,000 NFTs. So
I bet a lot of guilds are coming after you, because I know you put out some great content about big time, and you're a fantastic player and a great spokesperson. So whatever all-star team you end up on is going to be lucky to have you.
we will see.
So I guess one of the upsides of being on a guild, at least in the short term, like during early access, is that when you go through dungeons. You can have up to 6 people, but the NFTs drop somewhat randomly to anybody inside of the group running the dungeon. And some people have been like, well, I killed the boss or I did the most damage, I should get the NFT. To which we counter, well, okay, well, that sounds like nobody's ever going to be the healer or run support ever again. So that's why we went for that particular model, to really enforce that gameplay. Well, if you're looting with or excuse me, if you're raiding with people you don't know, it can be kind of frustrating to see maybe that NFT walk away with somebody else, particularly if it's very rare. But when you're all in the same guild or the same team, you're bringing it all back to essentially the same pool. So that's one of the upsides. There are higher NFT drop rates for larger group play. The other part is when you're talking about space. Space is our land NFT where basically upon global launch, it's a global hangout area for everybody inside. Guilds or whoever the space owner is can invite whoever they want in. It's a very private area, highly customizable. But then additionally, that's how you craft and upgrade the NFTs that you find inside the game. So if you want to make something more rare, if you want to change its appearance or level it up, you're going to need space to do that. Additionally, if you want to collect the in-game token, you need space and you need that time warden. So if you're very much about like, hey, I want to play and earn this token at the same time, then you're going to need that space and a time warden. And it just so happens that some of the space can be pretty expensive, and a lot of the guilds own the majority of that space.
Yeah. So let's say if a guild, like I have spaces, but I don't have a time warden mystery box. So if this guild, they have it, then will I be able to earn these tokens?
Yeah. So one of the features of Big Time is you're going to be able to permission that space out to other people. We understand not everybody's going to be in that game inside of Big Time playing 24/7, and sometimes they're going to want scholars or players to be able to play the game and use their space or their time wardens. And so there will be a feature inside of Big Time to permission it. So for example, if you own a lot of space, but scholar player Matthew wants to join alongside the Bufficer Guild, you could permission.
I don't have that many spaces.
Not yet. I think it's a matter of time before you start finding them. And then, but if you wanted to permission it to me and then enable that time warden so I could collect the token, you could do that. That is one of the features of Big Time.
Okay, awesome. But there will also be a free time warden inside the game, I heard.
Yeah, you're going to be able to find them inside the game, but it will be pretty rare.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's on my next buy list, the time warden mystery box.
Yeah.
It keeps going up in price, man. It's like, slow down.
It's tough. We did an AMA a couple of weeks ago with one of the guilds in Big Time, and we had a chance to talk about broad strokes of the economy and how we kind of generally view it as working. So as you know, during early access, the NFT drop rate was quite a bit higher than it is now, or than it will be during global launch, and that's by design. Some people paid literally $10,000 to get into the early access period. Well, the supply of NFTs was very high during early access, and that supply rate is going to kind of continuously drop, and it's about at a steady rate now. It's similar to what it would be during global launch, but the demand for cosmetics generally comes from the player base, and we're about to double the player base here with Ruby Pass, and then we're just going to continue to onboard players from there on out. So demand will significantly increase while supply will kind of only modestly increase. And if you kind of harken back to like high school level economics and you do all those shifts and stuff like that, you can see generally that's going to put some upward pressure on the prices of a lot of those NFTs, just from a simple econ standpoint. We'll figure out some other ways just to make sure that the supply and demand are met in such a way that you can use space effectively. But we are encouraged that people seem to like the features they've seen so far inside the game.
And for the Ruby Pass, if you don't have one, how do you go about earning it? Is that still possible?
It is, yeah. So the Ruby Pass is basically invite only. So this is something we've given to people who are very active inside of our communities, or some of our ambassadors or co-creators, such as yourself, where basically you're vouching for the people who are going to play inside the game. It's not something you can buy, which is very important to us, but it allows us to onboard users, show them new content, not overwhelm our servers, but also encourage people to kind of play, to talk about Big Time, and then interact with our overall community.
And when can they play, and how long can they play it for?
during the Ruby Pass period.
Yeah.
So Ruby Pass period will probably be starting in the next couple of weeks. We mentioned it'll be sometime in July, and then that will be able to take you all the way up through global launch. When global launch happens, people's levels will reset from early access, but you're still going to keep all of your NFTs.
Oh, so the alpha is not going to close?
No, the plan is to keep it basically all the way up
Oh.
until global launch. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I thought it was going to close.
Some people have mentioned that idea, just like, hey, but the plan right now is to keep it up and open until global launch. That's correct.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I thought it was going to close. I was like, what game am I supposed to play now? But that's good news, though. That's good news. So I guess you guys will just be continuously doing patches and maybe adding some content, you know,
Yeah,
throughout towards global launch.
exactly. I'm pretty excited. I know some of the stuff that's coming out with the Ruby Pass patch. I so wish I could release it right now. I think you are going to be excited about it. It's a lot of things. It's a lot of things that the community has been asking for, and some people have
Okay.
been asking for it for the last few weeks. Like, hey, when are these features coming out? And we're finally able to show them that and get that into the game for them here in time for the Ruby Pass period.
I gotta make sure I get on early, so I'm the first
Yeah.
one to create that content.
For sure, for sure. I think I honestly, one of the cool things I saw with the Ruby Pass patch updates is that this is very much big time responding to its community. Um, we uh we have a Discord which has about 400,000 people in it, but then we also have the forums for people who have the early access passes. And the best way for our developers to get feedback is through the forums, and we scroll through them every day. We categorize all the comments, we discuss them, and we have these community meetings every day. We go through those things intensely, and these features and these comments that people kept saying that they wanted to see inside of Big Time, well, we're finally able to bring it in. Unfortunately, it just, there is a certain degree of developer engineering time and space, and so it took us a little while to roll these things out in addition to the other content. But we're excited that users are going to be able to finally see it.
Yeah, I mean, when you guys created the forums, it was like, oh my god, no one does that. Like, no Web3 game has done that. And I remember when I was younger, I would spend hours on forums. It was just like a great hangout place to, connect with other people and nerd out. So it's good to see that Big Time did it. Brings back a lot of old memories.
Yeah, I thought the forums were really good. It was a consolidated place, and while our Discord community is fantastic and we love our members there, the fact is the majority of those players are not playing, and some of them want to start playing, and we do put out a lot of updates to them and address them with our moderators and with the Big Time core team as well. But the forums were a place really for our consolidated player feedback, and so that's just something the developers can go through, can quantify, and then it puts it down into a single place for them.
And this is a question that I love asking to, people building projects. Like, in the NFT space, they want something done now. They want, like, people that invested in spaces, they want it to be worth $1 million now. But building a great game, building a great game, it takes a very long time. So how do you do that? How do you make sure that the product is on point while making sure that the short-term needs of the community is satisfied? Like, how do you juggle that?
It's probably the hardest juggling act that we could do. I mean, the game that you see right now is almost 2.5 years worth of work.
Yeah.
I think that was the first day that the Slack channel was created, and the conception for Big Time is almost 3 years old at this point. So it's been around for a while, and it's taken a long time just to get to, this beta version of it. And this isn't even the full content that's out there. It's been challenging in some ways. One of the things I think Big Time has done well is that we've under promised and over delivered. So for people who are really following us closely, we only announced when our early access was going to start on a pretty small Twitter space that we were hosting that only had about 50 people in it. We're like, hey, one more week and you're going to be able to start playing. And for most people, I think they were surprised at the amount of content and how well developed the game was aesthetically. In terms of bugs, they were relatively minimal. I think that's been a big benefit for us, so that when people get into it, they're like, whoa, this is good. Those trailers were actually real gameplay footage. They weren't just thematic. And that's been good. So they kind of know what they're getting into, and their expectations um, are almost lower than what the reality ends up being. So it kind of projects it moving to the right way.
Hmm. Yeah. And why do you think Web2 gamers have not joined the Web3 gaming space?
I think the biggest one was these barriers to entry. To go back to that Axie example, if you think about what you needed to do to start playing Axie right off the bat, if you had to create a MetaMask, you needed a wallet, you needed crypto, um, you needed to buy your Axies, or if you were a scholar because you couldn't afford it, you had to apply, and then you had to be vetted, then you had to be onboarded into
Mhm.
the game,
Yeah.
and it's a lot. It's a lot for some people who are like, hey, I just want to click play, download, and give it a shot because I may not like this. Um, and so I think those high barriers to entry combined with some not great gameplay has been pretty challenging. And that for the most part, Web 2 gamers have not moved into Web 3. Just in terms of scale, you look at Axie kind of at its peak, and I think they had around 2.5 million monthly active users. Um, that's pretty good. The 10th largest MMO had 15 million, and that was Star Citizen. So the 10th largest MMO was still about 6 times higher than Axie was at its peak, and Axie was the biggest Web3 game. So the overall that gamer population has not migrated in, and we think we have answered some of those concerns about why they haven't.
Yeah, I mean, when Axie Infinity was at its peak, when SLP was like thriving and all that, I tried very hard. I made so many TikToks. I told my friends that you can earn money playing this game, but they did not want to join. I live in Singapore, so like they don't need even for like $50 a day playing a game. If it's a fun game, they will do it. But like
Yeah,
They didn't think Axie Infinity was fun, and on top of that, like a few of them that actually got interested. Okay, what do I have to do? I'm like, well, you have to download this wallet, you have to make a Binance account, you have to download that wallet, and after that, they're just like, I'm not doing any of that. So
yeah.
it's very hard.
Yeah, it's challenging. It's like I go kind of cross-eyed the first time, particularly if it's somebody who's not familiar with crypto. If you were talking to somebody who's crypto savvy, it's not that big of a jump. But if it's they don't know crypto and they don't know NFTs, and you're suddenly like go through all of these steps, and in about 3 hours, if everything goes right, you can start playing Axie Infinity. They're going to be like, you lost me.
Yeah.
Um, start looking sideways. But again, to enter big time, it's a Google account and a PC, and you're at it, and that's what we're excited about. It makes it a lot easier to play.
Yeah. You don't even have to make a big time account. You can just make I mean, I'm sure everyone has a Google account, so that skip a step right there.
Yeah, for sure. I timed it, and it really depends on your internet connection. But from the time that you type in the link to when you have a big time account, if you have a fast internet connection, it's under 20 seconds.
Yeah. I prefer it this way. I love just connecting my Google account, skip all the
Yeah.
typing stuff.
Yeah, and you can connect your wallet too, and that's absolutely there for users who want that, because some of them do. Just in terms of scale, we anticipate that 80% of the users inside the game aren't going to spend a single penny. Um, somewhere 70-80%, somewhere in there. We think about 10 to 20% are going to have some sort of demand for cosmetics, and then about 10% are really going to be involved in collecting and upgrading the NFTs, being the supply side for that market. That's somewhat conservative in my mind, because just based on market research, about 50 to 60% of people inside of MMOs consume cosmetics or spend money on cosmetics. So we've gone for a very conservative estimate of assuming that's 10 to 20% inside of big time. But even when you talk about us having a million monthly active users or something like that, that's still a huge player base, who are the demand side for these
Hmm.
cosmetics. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's kind of encouraging for people to look at. Like, we've been pretty conservative about what we think supply and demand will look like inside of big time.
Yeah. I mean, people love buying skins, so I do think people will definitely want to, if they enjoy big time, they probably want to buy a few skins to look cool in the game. Um,
Yeah.
do you think? Do you think for someone that owns space and these mystery boxes, do you think they'll be able to like start their own little business inside of big time, supplying people with NFT skins? Do you think that's a thing that's going to happen?
Yeah, it's a lot of that is going to depend on the player and how much time they're spending playing. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that somebody is playing the game and they casually find a cosmetic and then they basically upgrade it. If they've got like a level 1 cosmetic, they find a level 2, they keep the level 2 and then possibly sell the level 1. I think that's going to be pretty easy, and a lot of people can participate that way. Some people we do know are going all in on big time with their guilds, right? Like we
Mhm.
announced that Avocado, OpenDAO, Unix, Ready Player, all of them kind of took big stakes inside of big time. And then there's been a lot of other guilds that have come along as well who are like, hey, we're going to have a lot of players. We're going to do a lot of the upgrading. We really want to be a part of this supply side of the cosmetics. So some of them I think are really going to be spending a lot of time playing and grinding it out. And we definitely saw that during early access as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I had a gold pass and then I logged in and there were like this group of players, they were always playing. It didn't matter what time you logged in. The night, morning, after the gym, before work, they were always online. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, they paid like 6 grand, 10 grand for the gold pass. So I hope they were playing all day.
Yeah.
Not them. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the users reported some pretty incredible returns on it. It really depended where they kind of bought in on their gold pass, but I remember one user said he made $15 an hour of essentially of profit, and that was the gold pass that he spent. Excuse me, that was the amount that he made, divided by the number of hours minus the price that he paid for the gold pass, and I was pretty floored. And honestly, when I looked at the number of hours some people were playing, I thought it was a true testament to the strength of the human spirit. I was like, man, you're playing like 14 hours a day for like 6 straight weeks. Like, do you eat? Maybe you can't just eat G Fuel. You're gonna have to eat something else. You got to hydrate with water or something like that. But it
You just
was
gotta,
great to see people liked it.
you just gotta eat while you play, you know? Let the teammates do all the work.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I've got a huge bag of chips right here. Well, it used to be a bag of chips. Now it's a mostly empty bag of chips. So I can sympathize with them of just being able to eat and game and play at the same time.
That's the good life.
Yeah.
So, what do Web2 gamers like about Big Time?
I think the number one feedback I get is that it has a unique look to it. It doesn't look like other MMOs that are out there, and it's a real testament, I think, to our art team who came up with a timeless art style. So we do have the ability to travel back and forth inside the game. That is part of the overall lore, and they had to come up with an art style that wasn't overly computer intensive, but had to be unique as well. And I think they did that. This doesn't look like other games that are out there. That's the number one thing I get back. Two, I think people generally like the combat of it. It is pretty interesting combat. They like the cooperative team side of it. And then finally, I think there is a little bit of that dopamine hit when you find the NFTs that people like. Who doesn't like finding free stuff? It gets that NFT found message. I think they tend to respond well to that, and that tends to make them fans of NFTs.
Yeah, it's a very satisfying moment, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see what other questions. So yeah, the NFTs that we earn during early access, are they going to be exclusive to the alpha, or once the global launch happens, will we still be able to earn them?
Some of them are exclusive, and we released a couple graphics on what they look like. So, for example, if you look up what are the gold pass exclusive NFTs, they generally they will never ever be dropped inside the game again. They will never be accessible from in-game play only. They will have, you know, and so those things we released and they're current. Some of them are currently on the marketplace as well. Other NFTs like space are going to be available throughout global launch. So, for example, right now during Jade, you can find small, medium, and large size rare space that will be available during global launch as well, but just not in very high quantities. You're really, if you're unless you're buying it on the marketplace, your chances of finding them is relatively low, and you may not find what you're looking for.
Mhm. What about the epic and legendary spaces? Will people still be able to earn them?
Yes, but the NFT drop rate is significantly higher right now during gold, silver, and jade period than it will be during global launch. Those epic and legendary, they are dropping in higher quantities during early access, and there is a set quantity of them. So the majority of them will probably drop during early access, but in theory, they will be available during global launch. But again, there's going to be a lot more players playing, and not as many out there.
And for the big time tokens, there's not going to be a public sale at all. You can only earn it through gameplay.
Only through gameplay. So not even the CEO himself gets one. He's gotta grind the game. He's got to get it. And that's one of the things we did a little bit differently. We only have one token, and it comes from in-game play. And as I mentioned before, you need to have space with a time warden enabled to collect that token. And as you beat enemy inside the game, you can pick up the token as loot inside the game and use it. But no IDO, no IDC, and it's not tied to governance. And one of the reasons we did that is we saw some of the 2 token models out there have a very challenging problem set on their hands with dynamic market conditions, trying to buy it back, keep the prices up. And that's something we thought that is going to really detract from gameplay. And we want to always move towards a direction of enhancing gameplay and giving it back to the users.
Awesome. And let's talk about the ambassador program. I think you guys recently just launched that.
We sure did. I'm talking to the first major big time ambassador here, the Buffer.
First, I made history.
Made history, absolutely. And no, honestly, we were proud to do it. So the ambassador program, like you mentioned, is very new, and it's the result of a couple months of research. But basically, we've created an ambassador program for partners and content creators who we want to represent big time and who want to work with big time, such as yourself. So you've been a great voice for big time. We think you have a great audience, a great community, and you speak very honestly, and we appreciated that when we saw that at big time. And so we created this ambassador program where you get access to some insider information to add about big time. You can share that with your audience. You basically get inside baseball almost of what's coming out with big time prior to these announcements. You can share it with your community. And then on the flip side is you get kind of ambassador privileges. So you can get things like we do AMAs or co-streams with you. Basically, we want to say, hey, we like the Buffer. He's a great voice for big time. And we want to work closely with you. It's very limited. I think you were our first major one. I think we're up to maybe 6 right now. It's not a lot. And I know a lot of people are asking for it, but we were excited to launch it.
Yeah. I got a few congratulations DMs, so that's a big deal within the big time community. If you want to buy some big time NFTs, use my code, the Professor, when you're shopping from the big time marketplace.
Absolutely. And so there are some other things that come along with that for your users who do use the creator code, and then particularly for your community. But just like the Buffer just said, when you go to the big time marketplace, if you're looking for cosmetics or you're trying to get some NFTs for big time, use that content creator code when you're logging you're logging out and executing the purchase, and you're going to be happy with what you get.
So do they get a benefit as well?
They do, yes. One of the main things they get right now is that insider information too, which is going to be tied to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, cool. So what is the biggest takeaway or a lesson from the alpha?
I think the biggest one for us was how we onboarded people who didn't have early access passes. We were very, very committed to not taking away from the value that gold, silver, and jade pass users had, right? They paid big money, and a lot of people came to us like, hey, I want to try out big time, put me into the game. And we were like, we're not going to just make gold passes or silver passes for you just to try it out, because some people like yourself paid some good money for that, and we're not going to take away from that. So we had to figure out creative ways to get them onboarded and into the game in an enjoyable way. We had to do some kind of unique stuff, basically putting together a different game. But I think for the most part, we've got some great feedback in early access. People like the gameplay, and if anything, we've been a victim of our own success, where people are like, I want more access now, I want more content, I want to get more people into it. And each step of early access with Ruby Pass and getting closer to global launch gets a little bit closer to doing that, to getting that extra content for them.
Awesome, cool. So when the Ruby Pass holders enter, the NFT drop rate will be lowered a bit, but you'll still be able to earn these NFTs. Yes.
Absolutely. Yep. And it's a pretty different dynamic. A lot of those early access pass holders were NFT people, but a lot of the Ruby Pass holders are people who probably don't have a lot of or haven't spent a lot of money inside the game, and they just want to play a great game. So it'll be a little bit of a different shift of the community playing it, but it's going to more than double the number of players inside of it, and they can still collect NFTs as well.
Cool, awesome. And
Yeah.
what is the vision of Big Time?
I think the one of the biggest things about Big Time is bringing Web 2 gamers into Web 3. And I think we're probably the best way to do that. And we're the best way to do it for two main reasons. One, it's very easy to start collecting and upgrading NFTs inside of Big Time, and it's a good game. I think those two things, when you get down to it, are the two things that players want from their Web 2 experience to carry over into Web 3. That, combined with the ease of access, I think is going to make it so that we can really transition Web 2 gamers to normalizing NFTs and crypto inside of games, and then looking at it as a positive as opposed to something that's a negative.
Yeah. I mean, playing Big Time is just like playing a Web 2 game. You don't know that there's blockchain technology attached to it, which is ideal, especially at this point.
Absolutely. And that's by design. And so some people really are like almost confused or taken aback. Like, how am I collecting an NFT if I just have a Gmail account? And that goes back to another thing that Big Time does very well, which is we have this patented technology, the Vault, where you're going to be able to move NFTs outside of the game onto a variety of different chains. But by doing a lot of those on-chain, off-chain splits inside of our marketplace, it significantly enhances the number of people who can partake in that economy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. And for my last question, is Shadowblade gonna get a buff?
I don't know. I think so. I think that's one of it. I can tell you that there are more character classes coming out, and they will probably be tied to some of those additional timeshares I mentioned to you. One of the cool things that the developer team told me about our character classes, because as you know, they're all tied to a pocket watch. Well, we have 4 character classes right off the bat, but as we add more timeshares and vary the type of gameplay, we can kind of more seamlessly add in more character classes. And we can add, for example, a wizard or somebody who's more shooting focused, and that will allow users to optimize to whatever our next levels are. And when he explained that to me, I was like, man, we really we left ourselves a lot of options for expanding the game in the future to appeal to a lot of different types of users. I thought that was just a freaking cool idea. So who knows? There may be a buff out there.
Cool. That's good to know, because I love the Shadowblade, but at the moment I'm just like, no, I can't use this.
Yep.
Yeah. I had a feeling Big Time was gonna add more character classes. I definitely thought that was possible. So I'm excited to see what they are if they do come out.
Yeah, my highly unmathematical answer to how much gameplay is out there versus what will come out in global launch is that I think beta is showing about 25% of the in-game features and gameplay that you're going to see during global launch. That's because you're not seeing things like the space upgraded. You're not seeing those additional timeshares. You're not seeing the additional content that will be released. You're not seeing those additional classes that will release in the future. And so if you're liking the beta, I think you're going to really like it by the time global launch comes around.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great to know. I mean, more content for everyone. And exactly. I'm very excited to play the full game when it's out.
We're looking forward to having you inside the game and your community as well.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we end the stream?
I think that's about it for me. This has been an absolutely great discussion. Thank you very much for having me on here. And as always, if you go to the Big Time Marketplace, be sure to use the Bufficer creator code on logout. It'd be remiss if I didn't kind of shout that one out here. But thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you for coming on, man. Have a great day.
All right. Have a good one.
Peace.
Bye.